And therefore just think of already Al-Afghani was appalled by the fact that the princes in Islam, in Muslim countries, neglected public education. He said in the Quran, it is quite clear that Muslims are to be educated. They are to read. They are to read. They are to read the Quran. They are to be thinking. They are to be intelligent. And therefore, education is surely for men and women is both demanded. And already Al-Afghani criticized the princes, and you see this movement that after him, there were there were in every Muslim countries, there were such spiritual leaders. This came into Turkey. Sufism is not the only source of Gulen. There is, of course, Said, this wonderful Turkish Sufi, but of a special kind, really a modernizing Sufi, an extraordinary author, who was the teacher of Gulen. You have this movement that takes on a special form in Turkey, and there it really flowers. And I'll shut up in a minute. Gulen and the others reread the Quran and find in the Quran these wonderful passages where the Prophet speaks of pluralism. There are 3 or 4 passages, I should have brought them along, in which the Prophet says that God has created so many races and so many religions, and this is God's will. And the Prophet said, vie with one another in goodness. That is, the competition among the religions and among the different cultures is to be good. That is, to be generous, to be good, to do God's will. And so you have, therefore, in Gulen this enormous openness to pluralism on a Quranic basis. And this was mentioned before. He went to see the Pope in Rome. He went to see the chief rabbis in Jerusalem. He went to see the Orthodox prelate, I don't know, in the patriarch in Constantinople, in Istanbul, in order to symbolize to his own people and to the world. And of course, I have this great admiration for this man, because in addition to his reform movement within Islam, total fidelity to the substance of the faith, but changing the ethos. The ethos is changed. At the same time, in his position, he was also quite willing to face the frowns of the government. That you have, we heard this morning, the comparison between Turkey and France. There are certain parallels there. You have, in France, you have a kind of official laïcité, this official separation. Very good, I'll shut up in a minute. You have the laïcité in France. That is, France is a secular country, and therefore religion should be private and not public. And you have Kemalism in Turkey, which had the same kind of philosophy. And therefore there is a parallelism, and Gulen had the courage to move away from this, to create a movement, to have the sense to stay out of politics. That he said that political parties come and go, Islam remains. And so he dreams of an Islam from below, not the state Islam, but the civic Islam. That is, you reform society from the bottom up, from people changing their mind, changing their customs, and in this way society will be changed. So a few words about my admiration for the founder of your movement.
I would like to start out by locating myself. As some of us work in reflection of theory and praxis, it's important for us to locate ourselves. One thing I can say is I was on a trip to Turkey with Gulen for 10 days that we went very fast, flew through. My disciplines are actually social work, and theology, community facilitation, and community ministry. And so I want to speak out of those experiences and do some reflection on those. Catholic theologian Paul Nitter has worked a lot on trying to help us establish ways in which we understand what interfaith relationships are about. In One Earth, Many Religions, he makes the case that we need interfaith dialogue because the earth and all the peoples are suffering because of the lack of justice and ecology in our world. He says we no longer have the luxury of living separately and or claiming superiority over one another, both faith groups and cultures. The world is one, and we must find unity with one another. Nitter is not asking us to become one religion, but to talk and reflect with each other as well as work together to relieve the suffering of all the people and of the earth itself. Meaning the plants, the animals, the water, the air, all the other environmental factors. So our dialogue needs to become action, as we talked earlier about becoming people of action, not just discussion. And Nitter calls this the dialogue of life, working with specific concerns in locations throughout the world. I agree with Nitter as I work locally in the Waterloo region and in Ontario, and yet I want to maintain a world consciousness, which my trip to Turkey did. Dialogue with residents of other faith groups in the Waterloo region and with peoples of other nations as I have traveled, just a few places, has helped me to search, critique, and deepen my own faith in the Christian and Mennonite tradition, to gain a wider picture of the world, which includes the suffering of the world and the peoples, and then to move to actions with others to create new options which are more humane, which get beyond the blindness that I have from my own experiences and are life-giving not only to me but to other people. By talking and working together, we relieve the suffering of other human beings and of the earth. But there are barriers in our world and within our faith communities. The secular culture marginalizes many of our faith communities and is increasingly individualistic, materialistic, greedy, and capitalist. These forces are at the roots of much of the violence and the oppression and suffering of humanity and the earth. At the same time, some members of our own faith groups are caught up in things like isolation or hostility or competition with peoples of other faiths and other cultures, and are not able to move toward the partnerships we need to bring the creativity, the ecology, and the justice in our world. I would like to provide some illustrations of what we're doing in the Waterloo region, how we're talking and working toward the justice and ecology that we all seek. And I will try to draw some parallels to the Turkish environment, where the country is 99%. I see a parallel between Turkey and Canada in that Canada is 80% Christian, or 75%, depending on how you count it, and Turkey is like 98, 99% Muslim. And so there are parallels in terms of the barriers that we face in these two situations.